Okay guys, welcome back to Teen Muscle Radio and episode number 19. So today we are joined by one of the biggest names in the fitness industry and definitely the bodybuilding industry. So we are joined by Jordan Peters. So Jordan, I'm going to let you basically introduce yourself, give the listeners a bit of a background if they've sort of been living under a rock and don't know who you are. So give them a little bit of background on you.
That's a very kind introduction. Thank you. So I'm Jordan Peters. I run an online training company with my partner, Corin. Background-wise, I started competitively bodybuilding when I was 18. Prior to that, I was playing rugby.
Okay.
And when I stopped playing rugby, I needed something to channel my competitiveness, and I was already pretty good at lifting weights. I'd had some good experience in being taught by good S&C coaches. So at the age of 18, I already had a good understanding of how to grow and make big leaps forward quite quickly, which was fortunate. So I took to bodybuilding really very well. And then I decided quite quickly that this was a path I wanted to go down. So
Yep.
At that moment then, I went to Loughborough to study sports science.
Okay.
And this was all evolving around immediately, like my love for gaining muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It took hold of me very, very quickly. And so straight away I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to spend my life doing, be it either competing or learning about it, and then what evolved now into probably what I'm best at, which is coaching. So following Loughborough, I then did my postgraduate in nutrition with the CIN, and then now I'm doing a master's in exercise physiology at Manchester Met. That's where I'm at, kind of education-wise. Competitively, this year I won my NABBA Pro card by winning the NABBA World Champs.
Awesome.
I've been trying to win one of those NABBA international shows for a few years, and the standard is very high. So I was happy this year to have brought a look that was good enough to do that. So that's me. That's where I'm at, and hopefully that's enough info.
Yeah, awesome, definitely. Obviously, a lot of people will know you, and I've definitely sort of that last comment as well. I've been following you for a while, and I know that you've been working extremely hard to sort of get to that level. And yeah, I think when I sort of saw you achieve that, I felt like I was sort of a little bit a part of your journey, because I'd followed you for so long, and that was really cool to see you finally achieve that. It reminded me a little bit of sort of when I followed Dusty Hanshaw and he turned pro. It was like that sort of, always trying to grind to get to that level, and it was awesome to see it.
I mean, it was really nice. I had some incredible support for that show. I was really blown away actually by how many messages I got, and it was so nice. And that reconfirmed to me again that I'm doing the right thing when the response was what it was, because don't get me wrong, I could have been better at that show, and I don't actually think that was a particularly hard show, so I may have been gifted that card to an extent. But the reaction that I got completely overshadowed any aspect of that, because I was just so happy that like I said, it just reconfirmed to me that, like, obviously I'm helping people, and then people are showing that support back, and that was a nice moment.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So Jordan, I really wanted to sort of today delve into an aspect of sort of how to maximize muscle building for a potential sort of young individual. So the listeners to this podcast are generally sort of younger individuals, and like we discussed off air, they're generally sort of natural drug-free individuals, which we'll touch on later. But what I sort of wanted to do in order to get a good answer from you on this question, because I know that it's something that you really specialize in, I wanted to sort of give you the scenario of a young guy or a girl, for that matter, comes to you and sort of inquires. They want to build as much muscle as possible. Now, I want first to ask sort of, a very broad question as to how you would potentially structure a young individual's training for that goal.
So what we have to bear in mind is that with that kind of low level of time in the gym, someone in that scenario is going to reap the benefits from training body parts at an incredible high frequency. It's simply the matter of the more often you do something, the better the results you're going to get. Now, as you grow bigger, that does become less so, and I don't think you can train things as quite a high frequency as you can when you're a complete beginner. You could literally go in and train the squat or a squat variation every single day. Because as soon as you start to learn motor patterns and movements and you learn how to recruit muscles, you're going to grow. And initially, for a novice trainer, those aspects are key, because your ability to recover isn't so much an issue because the stimulus is so novel that your body will adapt regardless. Now, obviously, if your training volume is too high, when your training frequency is high as well, that's going to put you at a big disadvantage to growing. So if you were to go in and do full body sessions every other day, or at least then if you like training more often than that, which is sometimes what I find, I have novice and young trainers come back to me, they want to be in the gym more, which is fair enough, and I do understand that. So then in that scenario, I would then put them onto an upper-lower split, where they can possibly run upper-lower rest, or upper-lower rest, so it'd be 4 on 1 off. And what determines that is just about their recovery capabilities. So when you're training at that kind of frequency, you need to make sure that your training volume is relatively low. And to rather maximize the sets that you are doing, the intensity has to be very high. So these cannot be sub-max sets when the training volume is low. And that's very important. You cannot leave reps in the tank. You can't think to yourself, well, I've got 4 work sets here, so I'll eventually reach failure by the 4th set, because you can't afford yourself that option when training high frequencies, because you're going to overreach and then soon your lifts will regress. So typically you're only going to have 1 or 2 sets per exercise, and you need to really, really make those count. So let's say take an upper body workout, for example. We may only have 4 sets total for chest, and that could be 2 exercises of 2 sets each. Now, 4 sets total for chest seems like not very much work, but you and I both know that it all comes down to intensity as opposed to the actual amount of work that you're doing, because you can stimulate more than enough growth from 4 sets of chest. Just how hard you attack those sets. So then it would be 4 sets of chest, then maybe 4 sets of shoulders, then maybe 2 sets of direct tricep work, then possibly 4 sets of back, and that could be your upper body session. And those sessions, when they're done properly, are hard sessions. On paper, the total work amount might seem low, but then in terms of exercise selection, when we're only affording ourselves a certain number of sets, we want to be prioritizing the key compound movements. So with a lot of my novice trainers and the young trainees, they won't be doing very much isolation work, because the goal needs to be increasing overall body mass, and we're going to do that a lot more efficiently from using key compound movements. So things like cable flies, cable push downs, and leg extensions in this phase don't have a place in my
Now a question on that: how long do you think you should even consider not having them in a program? Like, would you say there's a sort of time period in which you wouldn't use things like that in a program, or does it depend on the individual?
I mean, I didn't use those things for a very long time, because they brought nothing to the sessions for me.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'd done dips and I'd done narrow grip bench press, a rope push down is not going to bring much more. And when I then think in 3 days' time, I'm going to be training these muscles again,
Yep.
as soon as I put that work in through those dips and those narrow grip bench presses, my goal then is to focus on recovery, not essentially beating up a muscle that you've already stimulated adequately. The question then is, when do you bring them in?
Yep.
You bring them in at a point where you need more overall volume to get the stimulus required, because I do believe there reaches a point where you need more sets in a session.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily mean then escaping into high volume training where it's 25 to 30 sets a body part, because I'll never be an advocate of that.
No.
That to me just doesn't make sense. But you will reach a point where 4 sets for chest then won't be enough. And you may need 8 sets or 10 sets. But I don't feel you're going to hit that point until a good 2 years of training hard and logbooking your lifts.
Yep.
And maximizing what you can get from your lift progressions, until you then need to factor in what extra work can I do to try to bring about a hypertrophy response.
Sure.
And obviously when you do add those sets and your volume increases, this is where your training frequency then must decrease. And you then might evolve into a split that looks like a push-pull leg split.
Yep.
Where you're then training body parts maybe twice over 8 days, as opposed to training them 3 to 4 times a week. But I feel the most amount of progress can be made in those early phases. Now, I also don't isolate this to novice trainers.
Okay.
I will put back in someone that's quite heavily muscled into an upper-lower split if this is going to be a novel stimulus.
Yep.
By that I mean they just haven't trained like this before. They haven't logged their sessions before. They haven't utilised the idea of low volume, high intensity training. Now they could be pretty muscular, but if they utilise
still reap the benefits.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's quite interesting. I've had 3 or 4 guys this year that are advanced guys. They've got a lot of muscle, and I put them back on upper lower splits, and they carried on making phenomenal progress the whole way through their preps. But then think, well, actually I'm advanced, so I have to go back in at like a push-pull leg split or a 4-way split. If you haven't utilized these training techniques before, I would say go all the way back to the start of the process and see what you can eke out from the initial plans.
Yeah, I really do think I think that's a superb point, and I think that now, sort of with me having a viewpoint on sort of younger individuals, I think more people are like, they're starting at the experienced end. They're starting at sort of that low frequency, high volume method to training, and then they're slowly feeding into the upper lower splits. That seems to be something that's happened more and more frequently, and that's actually probably where I came from. Is I probably came from a high volume, low frequency, and then came right back to low volume, high frequency. That's something that I've been doing for a long time. So yeah, I think that sort of a question that I was going to ask you sort of throughout that as well was, in terms of what you've seen with individuals, especially maybe some of your younger clients, is there any sort of time scale that you would see someone continue to make linear progress in the gym, and when do you think that sort of tails off? And have you had sort of any sort of stories of maybe a client that's just made phenomenal progress, like absolutely no sort of stopping them in terms of their linear progress in the gym?
I've seen it. It is rare.
Yeah.
There obviously has to be a point at which that linear progression is going to halt. What I've noticed with the individuals that are able to make that progress for a long time is they all have similar characteristics in terms of the way that they go about things. They are low stress individuals.
Yep.
They manage their sleep very well.
Yep.
it seems that their sole focus is the gym. That is a lot of people's as well. But it's more so that their ability at managing their recovery, but kind of by accident, is very efficient, because they're not even focusing on recovery. It's just the fact that they're such chilled out people, and they don't have a job, they don't have stresses, they're kind of living at home still.
Yep.
They have their parents buying them protein, and in these scenarios, it's often then I make some really, really good progress with these guys, because they can just live and breathe this stuff. And it's interesting how the other factors of life will start to impact on your ability to recover from your training sessions. So that's certainly so. For those that still live at home, make the most of that, because when you get into the real world and stresses start to hit you, you're probably not going to be able to grow as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the best progress I've seen, either with sort of anyone that I've worked with or myself, has been in those low stress time periods, when sleep is just on point, everything's on point. You've eaten your meals for the day, you've stayed well hydrated. It's just about sort of ticking those boxes and creating that right environment to progress.
Absolutely, that's all it is. You've probably heard me say that phrase before. Just tick all those little boxes.
Yeah, probably have.
And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. And then if day in, day out, you're controlling the variables as best you can, then you're gonna be in a really good spot. And it's managing stress takes practice.
Yeah.
But you can get good at doing that. I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to grow so well, is I've got good at avoiding stress. So that will come down to then time management, and then being organized, and ensuring that you prep your food efficiently and you plan your days efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I go to bed, this is obviously pretty extreme, but on my phone, I'll type out the times for everything that I'm going to do the day that's coming up.
Nice.
The exact time I wake, what time I'll have breakfast, what time I'll take my dog out, then all the timings for everything right until I go to bed. Now that sounds kind of monotonous, and like, to some that will be a horrible way of living, but to others that really buy into this lifestyle, I can assure you that being that organized will really help you a lot.
Yeah.
Because then everything clicks into place, and everything is consistent. And the more consistent you can be with everything in your life, you'll rather be successful in everything that you do, be it your studies, your work, and your bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. And then I apply that kind of methodology to everything that I do.
Yeah, it makes a massive difference for sure, and I think that's something that I always preach as well. It's just that routine. If you know that something is going to work, especially sort of when you're doing something as serious as a bodybuilding prep, you're going to need routine, or you're going to have nothing to fall back on when things go to shit. So I think that's a really good point. In terms of what I wanted to ask next is, when someone gets into the gym, they tend to, I think sometimes too soon, they develop an idea that they've got weak body parts, and it's something that I probably experienced when I sort of started training. I was comparing myself to sort of other physiques, and you know what it's like now with sort of social media, etc. People putting up comparisons of themselves to others. Now, when do you think it's the right time to decide that, okay, I've got a weak body part, let's improve it? And do you think that there's anything that sort of helps you decide that? Like, for example, do you think you have to get lean before you decide that you've got a weak body part?
I would say for the younger demographic that it's nothing to even consider. I haven't been to a junior show where I thought, wow, that person there has incredibly lagging hamstring. like all I thought is these guys all need more muscle.
Yeah.
That's the consistent thought process across it all. And generally that's the same across like first timers, even at like adult level,
Yeah.
novice, beginner classes. It's very rare that you'll see people with imbalances. I don't believe it's until you've been training for and not even necessarily the amount of time you've been training, because you may not have even been able to grow that well, but
Yeah.
not until you put on maybe 20 to 30 pounds of weight,
Yeah.
where you'll be able to establish some things aren't growing as well as others. But even then, it's still not anything that I think needs addressing drastically.
Okay.
The notion of weak body parts is a strange one, and I don't really think it applies until you get pretty big. But it does depend on how big potentially you can get, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
On the whole, I think people get a little too caught up in this idea of I need to bring up lagging body parts. I think
yeah, for sure.
just focus on just getting everything big. And if you're training appropriately, then largely everything's going to grow anyway. Most people really have lagging body parts, from what I've seen, because they've been lazy at training them. I think that's one of the main things. Now, obviously, there will be some structural issues in that you might have someone that's in a phenomenal presser, but their shoulders and their triceps dominate the press, so their chest becomes lagging.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, that their chest will dominate the press, as will their triceps, so then their shoulders will lag. Now, there are scenarios such as this. And in that situation, it then does come down to changing the exercises to ensure you're recruiting the target muscle as efficiently as possible. But that could literally be down as something as simple as, if you've been focusing too much on barbell pressing, to simply start then using dumbbells, where you can allow your humerus to come to the midline of your body. And it will be tweaks like that. But on the whole, I think as long as you're training very, very hard and your exercise selection is good, you're not going to have the issue of lagging body parts to even worry about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely sort of agree with those points. I think that maybe sort of, do you think that maybe younger people are more sort of trying to assess weak body parts too soon because there's a rise of younger competitors? Do you think that that's maybe why some people are sort of looking at their physiques on stage, getting sort of feedback from judges, and then maybe sort of thinking that they need to start prioritizing on a body part?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, but again, there are some good younger bodybuilders around now.
Yeah, for sure.
It is surprising how good some of them are getting. Like I'm not terribly up to date with the young talent in the natural bodybuilding circles, though, I'll admit that.
Yeah.
But I imagine just because of the access to information now, from a social media perspective, people will start doing this younger.
For sure.
So by the time people get to the age of 18, if someone's pretty smart, they could already have 4 years of really effective training under their belt. And that can make a big difference. So then I suppose if you're comparing yourself to those, then you are going to seem like you have lagging parts in areas. But like I said, with the training setup at the beginning, if you go in and you do upper lower splits and you train like that for a year solid, it's impossible not to grow. It really is. And everything will make progress to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree with that also. in terms of log booking, I know that you're like absolutely massively huge on log booking the training, and how important would you say it was as a factor in sort of the whole sort of thing in terms of growing muscle for a younger individual? How important would you feel that log booking from the very beginning is in terms of the hierarchy of building muscle?
I, I do a seminar at the moment that's probably like 2.5, 3 hours long. Some of them are stretched onto, and I have a slide where I talk about logbooking, and I literally say, if you only take one thing from this seminar today, please take away that you must logbook your sessions. I think the changes that you can enable in a physique are incredible from doing it. There are days where you'll go in the gym and you'll start to warm up, and just during your warm-up sets, you'll feel shit.
Yep.
And if you decide the intensity of your session based on those warm-up sets, it's quite likely you won't get as much work done in each session as you possibly could. I certainly know that to be the case with me and my body at the moment, because I am beat up and I'm constantly on the verge of overreaching. So I'll warm up and I will think, holy shit, that felt heavy. And I'll slowly just work my way through my warm-ups, and then eventually I'll get to my very last warm-up set and my body will start firing, and I'll be like, great, I'm ready to go. But if I didn't have the fact that I'm going in and I'm progressing my logbook today, I may not have even let myself warm up to that extent to where things start to then move freely. I may have decided, I'm just going to do a 10 rep set on this weight because this feels kind of heavy.
Yeah.
And that's what people will be guilty of. It will give people the option to cop out if they aren't logbooking their sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I know that people stop logbooking their sessions because their logbook starts to scare them.
Yeah.
But those that really pack on a lot of muscle will start to revel in that period of time where their logbook starts to scare them. Because once you hit that point where you look at your session and you think, holy shit, this is... Those are the sessions that will change you hugely. And if you string together a 12-week training block of sessions, all like that, and you manage to get through it without getting injured or getting ill, you will adapt like crazy. I've had those runs where by the end of it, I've looked at the progress in certain areas of my physique, and I've thought, wow, that really, really, really was a very efficient run. And logbooking will allow you to do that. So for those that are listening that potentially aren't logbooking their sessions, do so. And don't then just think, oh, it's okay, I'll save my sets on my phone, or I will remember my main sets in my head. Get a physical logbook and take pride in that, because that is your new training Bible. And when you become pretty good at training, your logbook will give you feedback. Because when you start to stall on lifts out of nowhere, you'll know, okay, I need to address something. Why did I press that lift? Am I not resting enough? Am I training at too high a volume? Am I training at too high a frequency? Do I need to increase my calories? Do I need to deload? These are the feedback that you can attain from logbooking. Whereas if you aren't training at that absolute limit of your capacity, first of all, you're not going to make the progress. And secondly, you're never going to really know, do things need to change?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not on the point of pushing your body to forcing an adaptation. And so logbooking is absolutely essential.
I totally agree with that point as well. And in terms of my own progression. On my logbook, I wouldn't ever train with it ever again, I don't think. And I think that I've made the most progress out of logbooking every single session. And I was laughing when you sort of said when it starts to, sort of scare you a little bit, is, when things just progress so well in a training block, and you start to think surely something has got to potentially stop at some point, and when you're on a good run, you just think, when is this going to end? And one question that I did have about sort of logbooking into the future is that I put up a post a few days ago about logbooking, and some of the comments from older individuals sort of suggested that when they're older, like they're sort of 10 years into training, they know what weights to use, and it's sort of all in the top of their head. But my sort of thoughts with that, like, is surely they don't want to progress anymore, because you can't possibly have it in your head exactly what you need to do to progress. And would you agree on that?
Yeah, I'm sure that those individuals that have been training for that long know what kind of weights they need to be using.
Yeah.
But that statement alone has defined their want to grow, in my opinion. So strength is pretty much an infinitely progressible tool for most of us. I mean, until you're as strong as Eddie Hall, keep going.
Yeah.
Because you can. It's crazy how strong you can get. One of the main things that will hold you back is injuries, and that's the downside. But as long as you're patient with the manner in which you progress your lifts, and one of the most frustrating things that I see when trying to get stronger is people testing their strength. And by that I mean they'll do 1 rep maxes and 3 rep maxes.
Okay.
And that to me is the worst thing that you can do as a bodybuilder. Testing your strength is irrelevant.
It's a very specific task, isn't it? Testing strength.
Really is. And if your body's not prepared to do that, you will get injured. There is absolutely no way I could go into the gym and perform a 1 rep max squat, bench or deadlift without maybe 8 weeks of trying to get my body ready. And even then, I may still get injured.
Wow.
Because I haven't been able to do that frequently enough to put my body through those stresses. So don't test your strength, train your strength. So if you want to get really, really very strong, don't worry about what you can 1 rep max. Focus on what you can do for 8 to 12 reps and keep going until that's a very big number. And if you're progressive with your food and your recovery's on point and your training plan is put together efficiently to maximize recovery, you'll be able to get incredibly strong. Like, I've seen some of the lifts that you do now, and you're 20, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 20, yeah.
I don't see very many natural 20-year-olds being able to do what you can do.
Thank you very much.
Especially with the squat.
Yeah, that's my forte.
It's very, very impressive.
Thank you very much.
I'm trying to think back when I was 20, and obviously I was using steroids at that time, and I'm not sure I could do then what you can do. I don't think I could. Not. In fact, no, I'm fairly certain I couldn't do that then.
Wow.
And that shows the effectiveness of
logbooking.
The logbooking and really understanding the training that you're doing. Because obviously all through that period I had a kind of a grasp on frequency, volume and intensity, but I didn't even know what those words were. So I couldn't explain it the way that I can now.
Yeah.
Whereas the fact that you can shows your grasp on that as a 20-year-old, which is then why you can do what you can do. And if the younger person takes this on board now, and they take you as a role model for this as example, by the time they get to the age of 25, potentially what they could be doing is mind blowing.
It's crazy, yeah.
It is, but they need to. You need to be smart in this approach, and this is one thing that I massively credit the natural bodybuilding scene for. They are way more in tune intellectually with how to build muscle.
You think?
Because I know this from dealing with clients.
Wow.
Whereas the assisted side will be way too caught up in the drugs.
Okay.
Whereas the natural side don't even have drugs as a luxury. So they have to think, how can I grow? So then their understanding of these aspects is much better. And this is what I found to be the case with most of the natural bodybuilders that I've spoke to and I've worked with.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing, how smart the natural bodybuilding community is. And it's kind of a sad thing how stupid some of the assisted bodybuilders can be because they get too caught up in the drug side. But no, all credit to you. I think that your understanding of these topics for a 20-year-old is pretty special.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, you should be very proud. I don't want to say that in a patronising way. I don't mean.
No, not at all.
But I think when I think back to, like I said, when I was 20, I was good at what I did, but I didn't understand it. I just intuitively knew what to do. And I've always intuitively known what to do in that sense. But having a grasp of it really allows you to then auto-regulate your training and make effective things. And that's what's so important, is understanding these things.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, thank you very much for those comments, Jordan. I really appreciate them. And I think that, you know, the way I've progressed most is exactly what you said. You know, it's the minute I got coaching, and the minute I reached out to someone when I was 17 to get coaching, 17, 18 years old, and I had them for a year, and the amount I learned in that year was ridiculous, but it gave me that understanding, and then all I wanted to do ever since that was to develop the understanding, and you know, the more I have, the better bodybuilder and the stronger I've been able to become. So I totally agree with you on that. I did sort of have one more question for you, Jordan, not to hold you for too long, but what I wanted to ask is, in terms of learning for the younger athlete, obviously, you know, podcasts like this, etc., is great, but in terms of where young athletes can go now to sort of develop their knowledge, where do you think is some places that you would recommend? And feel free to sort of, you know, shout about your own members page, etc., but where do you think you could go to learn as a younger athlete now?
There are still good forums.
Yep.
Where I was reading when I was 17, 18 was Intense Muscle.
Okay.
Which is, it's not what it was, but the nice things about those forums is that those posts that I was reading when I was 17, 18 are still there.
Still there, yeah.
And they're still gold dust in terms of the information that's available.
Yep.
And some of the older guys that are very good on there do still post, and there's a handful that are exceptionally smart. And obviously Dante Trudell was a regular there, and Dante being the founder of DC Training, which is probably one of the original low volume, high frequency training splits.
Mm-hmm.
Most of his information that he wrote was kind of initially recorded on Intense Muscle. And that was the first places where I started to read and try to get an understanding of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely advise those checking out that forum. Then other good places. What was it? I was really fortunate to work with Dr. Scott Stevenson.
Okay.
Who, in my opinion, is probably the smartest, most switched on individual I've ever met in the bodybuilding world. there's a vast gap between researchers and professors and practitioners in the bodybuilding world.
Yeah.
Whereas he closes the gap perfectly in the way that he understands both sides. Now, I know that to be even more true now, being back at university again, is that some of my professors are incredibly smart with physiology, but they haven't got a clue how that would be applied to bodybuilding, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But it's apparent. So you have to then find a way to bridge that gap, and people like him do that exceptionally well. And there are a handful of these guys. Eric Helms is good. He's just got his PhD.
Yeah.
Who are the other lads' names that are part of that group?
Team 3DMJ.
Yes.
Yep.
So all of those guys are very, very, very smart.
Yeah, they are.
And anything that they put out, I would make a big effort to read, because that information is quality. So I would seek out everything that they're doing, specifically as well because they're focusing more on the natural
scene, yeah.
Which is important, because as soon as you start mixing too much with the assisted side, it changes the rules in terms of recovery capabilities. And this is going to be one of the issues. Now, obviously the physiology doesn't change and you can adapt your training somewhat, but I think for the individual people, it's prudent to learn from good natural coaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
The content that I put out, most of the stuff that I put out pertains to both.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I'll try to explain more what underpins a good training plan in terms of managing your volume, your frequency, intensity. Now that applies to both.
Yeah.
My site would be very useful, but as well, in the same breath, my site has a lot of drug talk.
Yeah, yeah.
A big thing for me is honesty, and that's something that frustrates me in the kind of assisted world of bodybuilding, is that a lot of bodybuilders will be very concerned about sharing what they take and what they do.
Okay.
Whereas I don't believe in that. I believe in sharing everything.
Yep.
But if you do go to my site, obviously expect that there will be a lot of drug talk. And if that's something that you're interested to learn in, then I think some of my videos on my site that talk about the first cycle you're going to do and really understanding that are probably really beneficial for you. But if you have no interest in that kind of stuff, then I think that there are probably other sites that some of these natural guys are offering that are probably going to be more beneficial for you.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate sort of your honesty there with your site, and also sort of recommendations to sort of the natural side of things. And yeah, I'd sort of back that up with sort of saying that, you know, the 3DMJ side of things, they do have like a pyramid book which you can buy, which is like an ebook, which is very, very good as a resource in terms of learning if you wanted to go that direction. But yeah, I think sort of mentioning your site is very important, because I'm sure there's some younger people out there that are sort of in that stage where, you know, they maybe are sort of considering that side of things, and it's best that they obviously stay safe and have the knowledge.
It crosses a lot of people's minds at some stage. One of the things that shocks a lot of people is how blunt I'll be in terms of warding people off from using these things too early.
Yeah.
I believe I started using steroids too early.
Interesting.
And I believe I made a lot of mistakes very early on in terms of how I went about using steroids. So a lot of the information I put out will be based on the understanding of I've managed to build a lot of muscle
naturally, yeah,
but I made mistakes.
Yep.
So if I could go back and I could do some of that again, I know I could be even bigger now and even better. So that's a lot of my site is geared around trying to make sure people don't make those mistakes. So the advice is very honest in that sense. And the feedback is that people find that useful, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've how many members have you got on your site at the moment, Jordan?
We're very close to 1,000.
Wow, that's incredible.
We'll see. The site numbers come in on the 22nd of every month. So this month is growing well.
Yep.
We ended the last month on, I believe, 870 members, but so far this month I've had 125 sign up.
Wow.
Obviously, every month as well we do get unsigned, because people will sign up, watch all the content, and then unsign, which is absolutely fine, because if you take all that and then save yourself some money,
fair enough.
All that's fair enough. So we get maybe 50 unsigns a month as well.
Okay.
But then what I notice a lot is those guys then 2 or 3 months later they come back and they sign up again, and then they watch everything and then they unsign again. So they're just being smart in terms of saving their money. Really. But I think we'll be very, very close this time to 1,000.
Wow.
And if we be over the moon, because that was a goal, because the site's been running now for just over 2 years.
Okay.
And it was my 2-year goal to hit 1,000 members.
Wow.
So if we can be there at the end of this month, I'll be very happy.
Awesome. That's incredible. Yeah, definitely. So finally, Jordan, obviously I'd like to massively thank you for sort of coming on and giving up your time, and also like to mention that I did literally contact Jordan pretty much yesterday, so this guy is super responsive. So thank you very much for this, mate. I really, really do appreciate your time. So final thing is I want to basically give the listeners a chance to sort of follow you, and also inquire about sort of any of your, if they're interested in your services or want to chat to you more. Is there sort of give your social links out, and sort of any contact details that they might need?
Absolutely. So our website is trainbyjp.com, and that's where you can subscribe to the member section of the site.
Cool.
Then my Instagram is Trained by JP, and then the Facebook page is Trained by JP, and then obviously my partner Corinne plays a huge role in what we do.
Yeah, of course.
She is the hardest working person I've ever been around.
Wow.
That's bar none. And so for the female listeners, there's and for the male listeners, because she'll probably outsquat you. There's a lot to be learned from watching what she does and the way that she goes about things. She's British, European, world powerlifting champion, as well as having one of the best physiques in the country. So she's very, very meticulous in what she does.
Yeah.
So between us, we obviously run Trained by JP, and if you're interested in our coaching services, then obviously feel free to drop me an email, and I'll see what we can potentially do for you.
Awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time again, Jordan. Is there anything you'd like to add at all, or is that it? Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, mate. And yeah, listeners, I will see you in the next episode number 20. And thank you very much for watching. Cool. Thank you.